their grip. They would just be just like everybody else.
Well, hey, John, to even back that off and look at that from a macro perspective, have you ever considered that we know that the galaxies revolve? We know our own solar system revolves, and you mentioned vortex energy. This is vortex energy. We know that the planets revolve around the sun. We know that galaxies spin, but why? What causes them to spin? And you're talking about symbols. Think of the swastika, one of the oldest symbols on Earth, and if you'll think about it, it's a spiraling arms, and if you attach movement to the arms of the swastika, it's a vortex energy symbol.
Absolutely, and Margo Lane in a 44-part video series on YouTube, Margo Lane and Vortex Mathematics. You can go and watch it. It's about 4 hours long for if you watch 0 to 44 straight through. He talks about it and brings up the swastika. They bring up the pentagram as well as many other of the ancient symbols that we see listed on the pyramids or on modern-day architecture today. And we point to them and say, ooh, that's a symbol of evil. Or is that just what we've been indoctrinated to believe?
John, I find that extremely interesting, is that we have been indoctrinated to believe that these symbols are they have an evil mysticism about them, and people are told to stay away. But really, when it comes down to it, some of the secrets of the ancient world are locked in these symbols, and that seems to be just a power ploy on the part of the powers that be to keep people away from it. But what
absolutely. How do you keep a kid in bed? I mean, to be cruel to them, just say, stay in your room, I'm going to lock your room. If you come out of the room and come up the hall, there's a monster that's going to get you. So that kid stays in his room, frightened to come out of his room, frightened to step foot out of his bed after he's been put to bed at night. But guess what? The kid got brave enough to open up the door, walk down the hall, and find out that the monster wasn't real.
Well, Jim, how do you feel about current events, how they're playing out, and where we're going from here? Do you feel like we're at a tipping point as far as where we are as a civilization or a society?
Absolutely. In fact, the thing that's really got me concerned about the whole thing is that I've been watching these secret societies and these shadow governments operating for about 30 years now, and up until very recently, up until, I guess, post 9/11, it's been a fairly slow process. It's been 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. But now they're making a full court press, and it's almost as though they somehow know that something's coming up in the very, very near future, and that they've got to get control of everybody before whatever it is that's going to happen happens. So I think we're in a foot race to see whether we all just through fear and misunderstanding and just ignorance allow ourselves to be dragged into their totalitarian 1984 Orwellian New World Order, or whether we wake up as a people and start exerting our individual freedom and liberty.
I got a question from the chat room, Jim. I want to share with you. What is your opinion of the Rosicrucian order? Rosicrucian order, I think it is.
The Rosicrucians?
Yes. What's your opinion on that?
Well, the Rosicrucians were formed way back there several centuries ago, and they were even a inner core of Freemasonry, and they were coming at it, I guess, from the occult standpoint more than the scientific standpoint, but it all merges. And so I think that was an effort way back there a few centuries back to try to understand what we are now learning scientifically through quantum mechanics and quantum physics.
Very good. Hey, now, Jim, I'm glad you're here, and you're gonna help me solve something tonight. Now, Griff, you are under the impression that the Freemasons are just a club for guys to get around and to have a drink and to brouhaha and all that, correct?
I wouldn't quite express it quite like that, but yes, generally. Generally. And it's dying off because new people are not going into that lodge. The young people are not interested in it. So they're consolidating lodges all over the country and trying to pay their expenses as they slowly deteriorate.
Well, Jim.
Well, nobody wants to go into a lodge and wear a sheep's head and sheepskin and run around with a dagger in his hand.
Well, you should see what the moose do.
No, these are the mental images that were portrayed upon us all these years by one side or the other. So it's almost like damning prophecy.
Yeah, let me see if I can explain the whole thing to you, okay? It's really kind of simple. Here is the great secret of the Freemasons, okay?
Yes.
Ready?
Go.
They have no secrets. That's their biggest secret. And I'll tell you, and let me explain how that works. Early on, there was ancient knowledge, including technology, that was passed along. It's been passed along through the Talmud and through and it was picked up by the famous Knights Templars. The Knights Templars then are the forerunners of the Freemasons, and at one point, particularly when Robert Flood and Sir Francis Bacon and these guys had their invisible college, they had bits and pieces of this ancient knowledge, and that's why they were that gave rise to the alchemists that were trying to transmute metals, base metals, and change it into gold. They knew it could be done. They just weren't clear how, and they were working on it because they didn't understand the full range of the technology. But at the time of King James the First in England, when he was overthrown, had to flee to France, most of these people who came to be known as the Jacobites or the Jacobins, Jacob being another name for James, they were the supporters of King James, and they fled England too. And at that time, the secrets of Freemasonry were essentially lost. And through the Oliver Cromwell revolution and the anarchy that took place there and the rise of the Puritans, all of this kind of got scrubbed. But then after a while, when the monarchy was restored and they began to set up the royal family in England, they decided that Freemasonry was a pretty good idea, and they also knew the Freemasons had some of this knowledge, so they began to try to put it back together. This led to the formation of the Grand Lodge in London, and at that point they had bits and pieces of the old Masonic knowledge, and then they added on some of their own legends and mythology, such as the twin pillars and the master builders of Solomon's temple, on like that, and that they were just kind of pastiching the what little bit they knew, and as a result, it came down till today to where they have these ceremonies and these symbols, but even most of the members of Freemasonry themselves don't truly understand the meaning of it all. And then when Freemasonry took hold in the United States, the very first third political party in the United States back about 1830 or so was the anti-Masonic Party. And they took a big hit there too, and as a result, Freemasonry in modern America today is largely a social organization. You get in it for the camaraderie, you get in it for the business contacts and the social events, and it's distinctly different from European Masonry, Freemasonry, which today is a much darker version. And they indeed are working with some of these ancient secrets, but then I don't think any of them have a true understanding of what all that means.
Well, what do you think, Riff? I mean, what is your take on Masonry from your perspective?
Well, I think it's a men's organization. It's a social organization, and it's there for the coming together of men in a social environment, and it's good for business contacts and personal contacts. you will not find anybody today in America that has any thought of the Masonic Air Force spraying people with chemtrails or any of that stuff. It is essentially no different than the Lions Club or the Sertoma Club. The Eastern Star is the women's division. Can't you see the women of the Eastern Star taking off in the airplanes to spray people with chemtrails? Can you imagine that? And the Black Lodge is called the Prince Hall. It was kind of interesting. The bottom line was they stole the works or stole the words from the Masonic lodges and turned it into their Prince Hall, and it's very comical to see the errors that they put in there. That's another story. You would have to be in it to see it. You
right.
never understand the comedy of it. You have the Knights of Columbus, which is the equivalent organization in the Catholic Church or the Catholic segment of the society. So, it's the secret is in the Masonic Lodge that there is no secret. The only secret I know after 46 years of being in the Masons is the handshake, and I'm not going to tell you, Joe. You can't get it out of me. I'm not going to.
Son of a gun. I thought for sure you'd have spilled the beans tonight, but I will get you, Griff. I promise you.
I hear you. That's the only secret I know in 46 years of associating with these people. Now, in the York Rite, in that division of the Masons, they like to drive the little cars in parades and wear the funny hats. They like to party and they like to drink. In the Scottish Rite, you have three levels. You can become a third-degree Mason. If you want to go to the 32nd, you attend meetings for 32 times, pretty much, and you become a 32nd degree. If you do something in the world, you can be awarded the 33rd degree, and that's it. There is nothing more than that to find in the modern-day Masonic Lodge in America.
Well, let me ask you this, Jim. Where does the lore behind the Masons and Denver Airport spawn from? Do you know?
Yeah, everybody is fascinated with the unknown. And, of course, the Denver Airport is a very strange place. There's obviously and pretty well documented that there's a lot of underground levels to that.
Right.
And, of course, I've seen the wall paintings, and it's really kind of freaky because you've got the guy with a German-looking helmet and a bayonet and a rifle, and he's pointing at innocent-looking women and children, and so that's part of the allure, is just the fascination with the unknown. But I'd also like to say, though, that within Freemasonry, you have two broad circles, a huge, big, broad circle of which encompasses most of the membership, and these people are pretty much concerned with exactly what Griff just outlined. But then within Freemasonry, there is an tight inner circle who are a little bit more aware and a little bit more concerned with these ancient mysteries and ancient technologies. But of course, if you ask any Mason, are there these two circles, the answer will be no. Because if they're a member of the outer circle, they truly don't know that there is this inner circle. And if they're a member of the inner circle, then they have taken a blood oath never to reveal that. And you might say, well, how do you know that? Well, I know that by reading the writings of Albert Pike and other people, such as Manly P. Hall, who have been very, very high-ranking Masons and have been part of that inner circle. And they've actually stated that, yes, there is this inner circle. But if you ask the average Mason, he'll say no.
Well, Jim, is that no different than society as a whole, where you have the powers that be, or the people that pull the strings of the puppet governments, kind of like an inner circle, and everybody else is on the outside? Don't you think it's kind of the same thing?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. In fact, if you'll go to just about any organization, and I don't care what it is, it starts off with a group of people with some sort of common interest or common purpose, and everything's fine. But then when it comes to actually doing something, anyone who's ever belonged to an organization realizes there's always a handful of people who make the decisions